The Bureau called it a dead end. Veteran detectives fiercely disagree. Yet that precise window 8 agonizing minutes holds a secret nobody wants to acknowledge. We are far beyond theory. Verified security tape captured phantom cars escaping down a desolate back street from Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. It happened precisely when evidence suggested she was being dragged into the brutal dark. A former New York homicide investigator analyzed the frames one by one. He went on record, naming the specific make and model of the ghost car. Then federal agents leaked a complete dismissal to the press. Within hours of the tape airing, they claimed the video had zero connection to the abduction. Buried instantly. A woman missing 27 days. The math is incredibly wrong. On day 27 of Arizona's largest manhunt, those glaring contradictions actually point toward a much darker reality. Before we plunge into the abyss, if you are tracking this nightmare and demand raw truth, hit subscribe and activate alerts. We utterly refuse to chase baseless rumors. We dissect case files, official briefings, and glaring lies hiding in plain sight. Every single thread comes with a rock-solid citation. We tear apart official chronologies. Our questions stem purely from police admissions or top-tier investigative journalism. But what we found next changes everything. Smash the like button if you demand absolute transparency when an innocent person vanishes. What comes next will force authorities into a deeply uncomfortable corner. They will have to answer for this, whether they are ready or not. Consider the official federal narrative handed to TMZ this morning. An anonymous insider claimed the doorstep video, capturing 12 cars creeping through Catalina foothills between midnight and 6 in the morning, on February 1st was a complete dead end. They argued the geography of that secluded road simply failed the profile. The entry points and escape paths supposedly eliminated the drivers. Therefore, the agency officially declared those shadowy vehicles had zero connection to Nancy Guthrie's brutal disappearance. That definitive ruling hit the press before dawn. Yet, Fox News Digital had only just broken the tape's existence yesterday evening, implying a rapid federal review. They supposedly mapped the escape, ran the plates, and completely closed the book in under 12 hours. 12 short hours. That lightning speed feels deeply suspicious. This task force spent 27 exhausting days knocking on doors, scouring vast video files, and chasing over 21,000 dead-end tips. Look closely at the exact footage they tossed aside. Elias and Danielle Stratigouleas owned the security lens, capturing the quiet Catalina foothills streets where Nancy once felt completely safe. Their front door faced North Camino Real. It was a rugged back street roughly 2.5 miles away from the nightmare at Nancy's home. The digital eye watched everything from midnight until 6 in the morning of February 1st. Movement clustered right around 2:30 in the morning. That was no coincidence. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed a chilling detail. Nancy's digital pacemaker abruptly severed its phone connection at exactly 2:28 that fatal morning. Evidence suggested 2:28 was the precise moment the intruder dragged her out, or the instant someone purposely jammed her medical Bluetooth signal. Regardless of the method, 2:28 remained the bloody anchor of the timeline. But nobody knew yet what was coming next. A lone car swept past the Stratigouleas property at 2:31 in the morning, 3 agonizing minutes after Nancy's heart monitor went completely dark. Headlights emerged again at 2:36 in the morning, 8 minutes after the digital silence, on an empty escape route, leaving investigators with zero plausible answers. A predator grabbing a woman at 2:28 would need a fast, invisible exit. North Camino Real offered the perfect blind spot to dodge city traffic lenses and major crossroads. 8 minutes. That is the exact mathematical duration required to flee the crime scene and cross the Stratigouleas property line. Reporters from Fox News Digital verified logistics with the homeowners. Under typical daylight conditions, driving from the victim's driveway to that camera takes about 7 minutes. Speeding through empty suburban streets at 2:30 in the morning changes the math. A fleeing kidnapper bridges that gap much faster. The journalist's terrain analysis revealed a tactical getaway. The path bled out of the Catalina foothills, bypassing every heavily monitored intersection in town. Nobody accidentally wanders down that road. You only drive there if you own a house nearby, or if you are deliberately hunting for a dark corridor to evade police cameras. That was the first mistake. Bureaucratic failures compounded rapidly. 2.5 miles separated the Stratigouleas lens from the terrifying scene of the abduction. During the crucial initial hours, federal agents blanketed the community, searching for digital evidence. They pushed automated alerts to citizens strictly within a 2-mile perimeter of the target house. They demanded everything filmed between January 1st and February 2nd. The Stratigouleas property sat barely outside that arbitrary boundary. Law enforcement completely ignored them, failing to ever request their critical hard drives. Not a single badge ever walked up their driveway. Nobody bothered to ask if the shadows had moved differently that tragic night. Danielle confessed her growing unease to Fox News Digital. For nearly 4 grueling weeks after Nancy vanished, the absolute silence from the police felt increasingly bizarre. Traffic volume alone did not raise red flags. A handful of nocturnal drivers wandering the foothills was not entirely abnormal. But then they matched timestamps against the horrifying news reports. The lethal synchronization forced them to call authorities immediately, terrified of what they held. That sheer luck unearthed the tape. The system failed Nancy, leaving an open wound. Federal agents completely missed it. The break came only when terrified locals reviewed their own security feeds, desperate for answers. Stop right there and let that sink in. The Bureau kept feeding the public the exact same line, claiming they were scanning tens of thousands of tape hours. Officials called gathering and scrutinizing this massive digital footprint the absolute backbone of their entire hunt. Just yesterday, a federal source boasted to NBC News about hoarding up to 10,000 hours of visual evidence. 10,000 hours watched by federal cops. Yet somehow, the one vital video capturing a getaway car fleeing Nancy's quiet street at the exact second her heart monitor went completely dark, slipped right past the elite federal agents. Ordinary civilians living past the official search perimeter stumbled upon it, taking justice into their own hands. Focus on the phantom car gliding past at 2:36 a.m. Former New York detective Pat Brosnan studied the doorbell clip, taking his grim findings to Fox News. Evidence suggested one shadow creeping through the frame was a Kia Soul, given its uniquely angled roof, specific glass shape, and those unmistakable upright red taillights. Brosnan is no amateur sleuth. He spent tens of years working grueling shifts for the NYPD. He reads security tape like a native language. He announced on national television that he nailed the exact car speeding from Nancy Guthrie's block exactly 8 minutes after her life-saving device went completely dead. The vehicle authorities ignore. Should his theory hold water, detectives finally possess a concrete lead to hunt down. That model hardly dominates the highway, yet its bizarre shape makes tracing dealership records and local paperwork, alongside regional Tucson ownership, a totally straightforward mission. Federal agents already assured the masses they collaborated with Walmart, desperately hunting whoever bought that Ozark trail bag captured on Nancy's front porch night camera. That exact tactic could easily expose the Kia Soul driver. Just match the Pima County paperwork against our grim timeline. Pinpoint exactly which drivers tied to that specific model roam the Catalina Hills. Whittle down the suspects using phone pings and transit habits from February 1st's dark night. This is undeniably basic investigative work. But nobody knew yet that federal agents completely dismissed this clip as totally useless. Why? What invisible truth did they uncover in under 12 hours, justifying their total dismissal of a getaway vehicle fleeing just as Nancy vanished? The Bureau remains deafeningly silent on this. An insider whispered to TMZ that traffic flow patterns supposedly proved these cars meant absolutely nothing. Yet the terrified locals, folks actually breathing that air and driving those streets, swore to Fox News that North Camino Real serves as a direct, untraceable artery out of Nancy's quiet subdivision. Former Bureau commander and psychological profiler Jim Clemente bluntly warned Fox News just a few days ago that begging the local community to step into the light with their private insights remains the absolute best weapon for shrinking a suspect list. Clemente argued authorities must demand answers from whoever crews those dark streets between 1 and 3 o'clock a.m. on February 1st. Call the tip line, even if you saw absolutely nothing sinister. Evidence suggested that tracking down the drivers in that grainy tape and watching closely to see who refused to talk willingly would instantly wave a massive, terrifying red flag demanding deeper scrutiny. Clemente hardly stands alone in questioning why police buried this video with such blazing haste. Several veteran criminal investigators who vented to national reporters recently shared profound shock. They cannot fathom why the feds trashed concrete clues overnight, while swearing they were chasing every single viable dark shadow. The Pima County Sheriff's Department promised exactly 2 days ago that this hunt stays red hot. They swore not to sleep until Nancy Guthrie comes home or the bitter trail goes fully cold. Ignoring a security tape of cars speeding away 8 minutes after a woman's mechanical heart monitor went utterly silent, that is not exhausting all leads. That was the first mistake. Walk with me through this nightmare timeline just once more. The terrifying exactness of these digital clocks makes this clue impossible to ignore. 2:28 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker permanently loses its signal. Detectives suspect this is the exact second a monster dragged her into the night. Or worse, the very instant they violently smashed her life-saving wireless connection. 2:31 a.m. A shadow slips past the Stratigouleas home on Camino Real. 3 minutes after the blackout. 2:36 a.m. Another car hits that identical spot, exactly 8 minutes post-failure. Stare deeply at those numbers. Snatching a helpless victim from a quiet suburb in the dead of night requires absolute stealth. A seasoned predator avoids brightly lit boulevards. They actively shun major intersections rigged with flashing government camera lenses. They never risk streets heavily populated with witnesses, nor do they chance their tags getting snapped by robotic scanners. You stick to the shadows. You pick hidden paths, minimizing exposure. The brilliant ones deploy 2 cars. One hauls the captive, while the second shadows behind, providing lethal counter-surveillance in case the extraction violently unravels. 2 cars fleeing Nancy's silent block, exactly 8 minutes after her pacemaker flatlined. Slipping through a rear exit to dodge main intersections is not absolute proof of guilt, yet it demands fierce scrutiny instead of being dismissed overnight. But nobody knew yet how deep this dark contradiction actually sat. Feds cry dead end. Terrified locals see a clear escape route. Veteran detectives saw the suspect car and tight timeline as massive red flags. The dread deepens. Fox News Digital revealed another local spotted a looming stranger on February 2nd, mere hours after Nancy vanished into the cold night. They described a Hispanic male standing roughly 5'9", sporting a short beard and flashing a heavy silver bracelet, just dragging on a cigarette. She caught him prowling near a dumped vehicle barely a block away from the North Camino Real street perimeter. 5'9" perfectly mirrors the federal profile caught creeping on Nancy's front porch. The Bureau officially classified that ghost as an average male between 5'9" and 5'10". This chilling encounter struck on February 2nd, the direct morning following the snatching. If a predator ripped Nancy from her sanctuary and utilized North Camino Real to vanish without a trace, circling back hours later to retrieve a dumped getaway car or to see if the cops had finally sniffed out their bloody trail is incredibly standard textbook criminal conduct. Killers constantly circle back to their crime scenes. They haunt the body dumps. They obsessively revisit their dark theaters because they desperately need to know if the authorities are finally closing in. The terrified witness swore this creeping drifter did not belong. He lacked the basic gear for a morning stroll. He definitely was not out jogging. He just loitered beside a deserted car in a desolate stretch where nobody in their right mind wanders. That dark snapshot, a phantom mirroring the federal physical profile lurking exactly where getaway cars vanished mere hours post-abduction, absolutely means everything. Evidence suggested it is yet another terrifying clue seamlessly interlocking with this grim puzzle. And that was the first mistake. It is another glaring systemic failure that, to this very day, the Bureau has utterly refused to publicly address. The nightmare deepens. Fox News Digital confirmed a separate witness noticed a faceless stranger haunting an intersection tied directly to Nancy Guthrie's sanctuary back in mid-January. The bystander explicitly noted the drifter lacked typical athletic clothing. A brim obscured his dark eyes. He skewed young, radiating an intense predatory energy that completely ruined the illusion of a casual walk. That specific resident never saw the menacing figure before or after that isolated moment. Mid-January sat weeks prior to Nancy vanishing, yet it perfectly aligns with the chilling methodology bubbling up in this horribly botched investigation. Quiet stalking, tactical scouting, cold-blooded preparation. The feds released January 23rd footage of a ghost walking backward down Nancy's quiet street. Tactical experts immediately flagged this bizarre movement as a classic method for running counter-surveillance or probing police response speeds. If a second phantom haunted Nancy's street back in mid-January, hiding behind a pulled-down brim with absolutely zero legitimate reason to exist? Evidence suggested the monstrous stalking campaign kicked off before January 23rd. Step back. Absorb the horrifying bigger picture. Mid-January drops a disguised lurker by Nancy's house. By January 23rd, a backward-pacing stranger executes a terrifying dry run. February 1st, two cars navigate dark roads at 2:30 in the morning, 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker dies. February 2nd reveals a suspect perfectly matching the federal sketch right by that exact hidden road, guarding a dumped getaway car. Each isolated fragment builds a portrait of a highly orchestrated strike by monsters who spent weeks memorizing the blind spots, camera angles, and victim timing. Yet the feds utterly refuse to publicly connect these creeping shadows. They remain dead silent on whether the mid-January drifter, the January 23rd pacing ghost, the creep on Nancy's front porch lens, and the February 2nd suspect share a bloody bond. But terrified citizens are connecting the dots. The cold timeline supports a sprawling conspiracy far more than it ever contradicts one. Now, we must dissect the Bureau's hollow excuse for ignoring the North Camino Real tape. Media insiders claimed feds likely deployed geofencing tools to unmask the mysterious rides caught lurking in the chilling Ring camera glow. Geofencing forces cellular providers to surrender digital footprints, revealing precisely which burner phones haunted a highly specific crime radius at an exact, deadly hour. If agents dropped a digital dragnet around North Camino Real, strictly capturing the window between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning on February 1st, they would instantly harvest a roster of every single cellular device bouncing off local towers during the slaughter. Detectives can unmask owners from that dump, cross-referencing hidden identities directly against local getaway vehicle registrations, and potentially eliminate every automobile by mapping exactly where those drivers began or ended their late-night journey. If all 12 cars captured on that grainy tape perfectly matched up with active cell signals belonging to completely verified, cleared individuals, then federal agents would truly have perfectly valid grounds to discard that tape. But that was the first mistake. The victims terrified, grieving relatives claim investigators completely ignored them until the Fox News broadcast finally aired, proving federal agents never visited the actual crime scene. They never pulled the crucial security tape. They remained completely oblivious to that specific hidden getaway pathway until yesterday morning. Then comes the truly terrifying systemic failure. If these serial killers possessed the absolute discipline to stalk their target for weeks and blind her home security, to perfectly time their completely unseen approach, and to silently snatch an 84-year-old grandmother from her bed at midnight without waking anyone nearby outside, they possess the absolute chilling intelligence to leave personal tracking devices behind. Federal investigators publicly admitted that 0 mobile devices pinged near her estate during that fateful window. The monsters who stole her life carried absolutely no traceable electronics. Evidence suggested they utilized encrypted radios or executed everything completely silently. Without mobile devices, digital geofencing becomes utterly useless for catching the real killers. It only flags the other 10 or 11 random, innocent drivers cruising through that surrounding darkness by pure, completely unrelated midnight coincidence. And officially clearing those 10 cars absolutely does not erase the terrifying possibility that 1 or 2 among the 12 recorded vehicles belong to ruthless predators who purposefully abandoned their tracking devices completely. Former federal criminal profiler Jim Clemente echoed this exact chilling reality on Fox News. He pointed out that if a couple of those passing cars emitted absolutely 0 digital pings or standard mobile phone data, that blank digital footprint makes them infinitely more dangerous. Innocent civilians cruising at 2:30 in the morning always carry their personal devices. Their daily drivers feature active navigation. Their automobiles utilize OnStar or equivalent monitors. When a phantom car rolls through the frame without a digital footprint, investigators should immediately elevate it to suspect number 1, instead of carelessly dismissing it into the dark void as being entirely irrelevant. That sheer, reckless velocity behind their official dismissal triggers terrifying questions. Barely 12 hours passed between the Fox News digital bombshell and a federal insider casually telling TMZ the shocking lead was just a total dead end. 12 hours to digitally geofence the perimeter, identify every single device owner, and actually interrogate those individuals, fact-check their midnight alibis, cross-reference vehicle registrations, and officially conclude that none of those 12 cars possess ties to the grandmother's terrifying abduction. That signifies extraordinarily flawless detective work, if it genuinely happened, but nobody knew yet. The miracle requires every recorded automobile perfectly match an active cellular device, that every targeted owner answered instantly, and every alibi was instantly perfectly verified. That stacks an impossible mountain of blind assumptions. Compare that rapid timeline against the agonizing crawl defining this cold case investigation. Federal agents wasted entire weeks salvaging video from the victim's porch camera, painstakingly rebuilding shattered server files after predators intentionally blinded the digital lens. That crucial process devoured immense time and expertise. Biological evidence lifted from a discarded glove 2 miles from her home went straight into the massive National Federal Criminal Database and came back completely blank. Now those crucial samples await advanced investigative genetic genealogy profiling, a brutal bottleneck slowly draining away vital months. The Bureau publicly promised they are actively scrutinizing 10,000 hours of neighborhood video, a massive undertaking, forcing detectives to observe everything at normal speed, terrified that skipping ahead buries crucial clues. True justice always demands an agonizing, methodical, entirely exhausting pace. Yet somehow, investigators magically eliminated 12 separate getaway vehicles, just 8 minutes after the victim's heart flatlined, completely overnight. That contradiction feels like a systemic failure breeding wrongful convictions. We must expose their deliberate silence. They never explicitly claimed agents watched the tape and cleared its disturbing contents. They merely stated their traffic flow calculations proved the automobiles were completely uninvolved. That clinical phrasing hides a terrifying reality. Evidence suggested they judged the physical road, rather than actually tracking down the dangerous men behind those glowing headlights. But the terrified locals guarding their own backyards told journalists that North Camino Real absolutely provides a perfect, shadowy exit straight out of the surrounding Catalina foothills neighborhood. Fox News described it as a hidden back road, completely avoiding major intersections. That grim reality stemmed directly from local journalists, not speculation. If federal investigators genuinely believe North Camino Real fails as a getaway path, they are directly gaslighting the frightened local families who actually live right there. And if their official narrative relies on magically tracking and exonerating all 12 drivers, they completely refuse to explain that impossible speed, or why not one single driver stepped into the light, confirming they were actually questioned by authorities. But there is one final lingering nightmare. The lens caught 2 silent machines hunting in tandem, passing by at 2:31 and 2:36. Evidence suggested a highly calculated strike. If multiple players were involved, running 2 separate cars just made perfect operational sense. The lead vehicle would act as the primary transport, a shadow car. It follows deep behind, ready to run counter-surveillance, block cops, or create physical distance if patrol units responded much faster than anyone anticipated. 2 rides slipping out a back exit minutes apart does not definitively prove a massive conspiracy, but it perfectly mirrors the blueprints of how organized crime syndicates operate, and it was a glaring red flag demanding relentless digging, not a shockingly fast dismissal leaving everyone blind. According to an NBC News report earlier this week, Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos claimed authorities were agonizingly close to identifying the suspect's doorbell camera wardrobe down to the shoes, pants, and heavy jacket. He stated investigative units were actively hunting down retail giants and manufacturers to trace those exact purchases. That specific brand of meticulous police work, it absolutely tracks. It is agonizingly slow. It is hyper-focused. It forms the absolute bedrock of solid case building. But here was a brutal systemic failure. If local deputies burn hours tracking sneakers, why did the FBI blindly toss out escape route vehicle footage in less than 12 hours? The investigative priorities were completely fractured. Either this tape holds dark truths and deserves relentless forensic teardown, like all other evidence, or it is entirely useless, in which case the feds owe the public a clear explanation for ignoring the suspicious timing, the isolated route, and why a veteran detective's vehicle identification meant nothing. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie has been missing 27 days. Desperate for answers, her shattered family dropped a $1 million reward for any shred of truth, leading to her recovery. Yesterday, Savannah Guthrie uploaded a gut-wrenching video to Instagram, begging the void for someone, anyone, to speak up. She stared into the lens and pleaded, "Someone out there knows the exact detail that brings her home. Somebody knows. We are begging you to step into the light right now." Meanwhile, the Puma County Sheriff's Department confirmed this week the hunt remains blistering hot, funneling heavy resources into a specialized team of detectives strictly assigned to this mystery. But nobody knew yet that the FBI had quietly shifted major operations up to Phoenix, claiming boots remained in Tucson, while issuing official statements swearing they were hunting down every viable lead available. That was the first mistake, because supposedly viable leads were being tossed into the shredder in under 12 hours. High-stakes surveillance, showing suspicious cars idling on a known killer's escape route, was actively buried before the public even learned it existed. A veteran detective's rock-solid vehicle match, completely swept under the rug. Locals who had the neighborhood geography etched into their bones were told their eyewitness accounts of escape routes were totally wrong. Something deeply sinister was not adding up. And when a frail, 84-year-old woman with restricted mobility vanishes for almost a month, every single discrepancy demands ruthless, unflinching scrutiny. Let me be absolutely crystal clear about where I stand on these shadowy developments right now. I am not boldly claiming the FBI completely botched this. I am not saying those specific cars undeniably caused Nancy Guthrie's terrifying abduction. I am not pointing fingers to yell about gross incompetence or some massive federal cover-up. What I am saying is this: the terrifying speed and arrogant certainty used to dismiss that tape totally betrays the exhausting, microscopic methodology characterizing the rest of this massive hunt. And when glaring bureaucratic contradictions like that bleed into a missing persons case, they demand an immediate explanation. The public has a fundamental right to know how the Bureau reached that dead end. Was every single driver identified? Was every owner contacted? Did any of those shadowy cars suddenly lack vital cell phone pings or GPS tracking data? Could the suspects produce rock-solid alibis for driving that exact road during the witching hour? These are not crazy questions. They are the exact questions any investigative journalist or terrified neighbor would scream out when told crucial DNA-level evidence was tossed in total secrecy. If the Bureau is truly right, and those digital ghosts have absolutely zero connection to this horrifying crime, then brutal transparency about their methods would instantly rebuild the shattering public trust in this entire operation. But if they made a fatal error, if the call was premature, dragging that evidence into the light could violently rip this cold case wide open. Either way, deafening silence is never the answer. Nancy Guthrie was a human being who deserves justice, and her shattered family deserves the truth. And the community. The people who flooded tip lines with over 21,000 leads and obsessively tracked every agonizing detail. They deserve to know exactly why glowing, red-hot evidence is being tossed into an incinerator without a single word of explanation. This nightmare is far from over. The hunt rages on, and the dark questions surrounding that buried footage are absolutely never going away. If you hold any dark secrets about suspicious cars creeping through the Catalina foothills on the freezing morning of February 1st, call the FBI right now. If you drove a Kia Soul through that grid, dial the authorities immediately, even if you are utterly convinced your morning commute meant nothing. And if you know anything, if you hold one single, terrifying piece of the puzzle regarding what monster took Nancy Guthrie into the dark, speak up before it is too late. Hit subscribe right here to track these dark developments. Activate those alerts and spread this deep dive everywhere, because demanding true systemic accountability is absolutely everything. When precious time is running out, burying crucial forensic clues within 12 hours with zero justification is a glaring systemic failure we must relentlessly interrogate. Sweet Nancy Guthrie vanished into thin air 27 days ago. The predator hiding her secret is absolutely monitoring this broadcast. Right along with you. The chilling disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie isn't just a story about a missing person. It is a terrifying reminder of how vulnerable our loved ones are, and how the system failed Nancy, leaving an open wound. When a woman is missing 27 days, the power to bring a predator to justice doesn't always lie in a massive national federal criminal database. Begging the local community to step into the light with their private insights remains the absolute best weapon we have. We are the ultimate watchdogs. If an innocent grandmother can be snatched from a quiet suburb in the dead of night, we cannot afford to look the other way. We must demand absolute transparency when an innocent person vanishes. Burying crucial forensic clues within 12 hours with zero justification is a glaring systemic failure we must relentlessly interrogate. Dragging that evidence into the light could violently rip this cold case wide open. If you hold even the smallest piece of this puzzle, speak up before it is too late. We cannot let this bitter trail go fully cold. Thank you for seeking the truth with us. If you refuse to let cases like Nancy's be swept under the rug, please hit subscribe, smash that like button, and share this investigation everywhere. This is Crime Files with Liam, reminding you to stay vigilant, keep your eyes open, and always question the silence. We will see you in the next file.